Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Church Coffee, Christianity, Conservatism, and Culture. My name's Rob, and today we're by Dr. Rebecca Downey at Charlesville Direct Primary Care, and today we're talking a little bit about alternatives in the U.S. healthcare system. Dr. Downey, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
First question, as always, how do you take your coffee?
I take my coffee first thing in the morning with lots of half and half, no sugar. I can't imagine starting my day without it. I'm not sure I could.
That's probably for most people. Although,
But I don't drink it for the rest of the day. 2 cups in the morning, that's it.
there you
Done.
go, that's good. We both remarked we are, however, drinking tea currently, so this
Yes.
podcast name might be changed for a moment for an episode. What's your story? Give us just a little biography of your life and also just how you got into direct primary care.
Sure. So I am born and raised in New York City. Went to high school in New York City, went to college at NYU. Kind of always knew I wanted to go into medicine. When I was a little kid, everybody would come to me with their splinters and such, and I had a little sign on my door saying Dr. Downey. So it was kind of just something that I always knew that I wanted to do. Went to med school in New York, did my residency in the South Bronx. I started as an ER family medicine resident. At that time, there were only 4 slots in the country, so that was great, but realized very quickly that ER was actually not what I wanted to do. So I transitioned fully to family medicine. And I graduated in 2000. And then I ended up in Europe for the next 16 years. I married a German and moved to Europe. And surprise, surprise, I ended up working for the U.S. military as a civilian doc for the next 16 years.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Yeah. And that probably is why direct primary care became such an interest to me later on when I heard about it. Because in the US military, it's, docs really have autonomy. At least it did when I first started. Things started to change by the time I left. So docs
So you were a civilian contractor in
I
the
was a
military?
civilian,
You were
yeah.
not, okay. And when did you get out?
So I
Or
was
leave, I guess leave.
So I was there, worked in different bases off and on over those 16 years. Also had my children, so I didn't work for a little bit of time.
Did you work at the big base in Germany? What's it called?
I did. I worked at a NATO base, and then I worked at Landstuhl and Stuttgart
Stuttgart. Yeah.
and
That's the big
Ansbach.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really interesting to me because my uncle actually said to me, because he was in the military, and when I said I'm going to have the U.S. go into the military so that they pay for med school, he quickly told me that I would get dishonorably discharged. So I shouldn't do that. So it was kind of ironic that I ended up working for the military. And I absolutely loved it. I really, really loved it. It was very much outside of my world experience growing up in New York City, to work with people from all over the country, much more rural areas often, different life perspectives. And it was my absolute honor to take care of the soldiers and their families, and also people who had been in World War II who had married Germans and had remained in Germany. So that's kind of what I did up until 2016 when we moved back. And then I started working at a local clinic, and it was such a difference from how I had practiced
A
medicine.
local, what an American might think of a
Like a
regular.
regular insurance-based clinic here in Charlottesville. Great owners, really lovely people, but the force of like how medicine is run through the insurance model was just kind of hit me flat in the face, and I knew that I could not continue doing this. So I did it for about 2 years. I had heard about direct primary care probably 5 years earlier when I was in Germany. And direct primary care is really a grassroots movement that started in the late 90s. There's different people who kind of lay claim to it, but it's actually not a new model. It's the old model. It's the way medicine used to be done. So we can call it direct primary care. Direct primary care just means that the physician is directly compensated from the patients, that insurance is not paying us. So it's really just the way medicine used to be. You went to your doctor and you paid 10, $15 if you had something going on that you needed to be dealt with, and that was it. Insurance wasn't involved. So after about a couple of years, I decided to launch Charlottesville Direct Primary Care with zero business experience. And I was lucky and blessed enough that a number of my patients followed me. So I was in the black from the beginning. I wasn't making anything, but I was in the black, and I continued to grow. And it's the only way I could have remained in medicine.
And now a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Robin Hurst of Fora Travel. Robin is a former winemaker here in Charlottesville and would like to take the stress out of planning and customize your next planned adventure. Robin is a top-notch, detail-oriented planner. Having personally traveled to 25 countries and 33 states, she believes in building balanced itineraries that blend luxury and relaxation with adventure and exploration. She wants to hear what you're looking for and offers customer care that is easy and special. Robin does not charge a booking fee for hotels, cruises, nor tours. She has a tiered pay scale that she works with clients depending on what they need. For more information about Robin, please see the details in our show notes. And now, back to the show. Did the ACA change anything about direct primary care from what sounds like the 90s after 2009? I know you weren't in it, but maybe you heard something about possible changes. I know the ACA was mostly focused on insurance, but I didn't know if there was anything that you might be more regulated within the ACA.
The only thing that it doesn't really have anything to do with direct primary care. You mean, did the fact that there's Obamacare or ACA change this movement or drive this movement? No. I would say the problems started way before the ACA was even a thing. The problem started when insurance companies started taking over medicine, and when they started doing, HMOs and all of those things, and buying up practices. This happened in like the 80s, starting in the 80s. And medicine changed from doctors owning, 80, 90% of practices to now maybe 10, 15% of practices. So no, the problem started way before then.
And now a break to hear from one of our sponsors. Are you tired of stepping in your dog's backyard landmines? Are you unable to pick up after them, don't have time, or simply don't want to? Let Scoopity-Doo take care of it for you. They scoop when you can't. Please see the show notes for contact information. And now, back to the episode. Yeah, I wasn't framing it as a problem. I just didn't know if there were more or less regulations after the ACA on primary care.
Probably.
None that it sounds like. It sounds like you just opened your door and were like, oh, I've got patients now.
Yeah. There's no regulations for me from the ACA because I'm not part of the insurance. There's some gray area in terms of whether people can use health savings accounts and things like that to pay for direct primary care. Actually, Trump in his first term, because when the HSA legislation was written, direct primary care didn't exist, so it's not in there. But there is an executive order from the first Trump administration allowing for the use of HSAs to pay for direct primary care. And also health share groups. If people are familiar with health share groups, there's different kinds of health share groups. They're not like insurance. They were actually born out of the fact that they started as religious groups who didn't want to abide by the legislation of the ACA. And so they formed kind of these groups and you paid in. And so it kind of functions like insurance. It's more like catastrophic, but it does offer, some protection. And they were very interested in DPC and partnering with DPC. There's secular ones now, there's religious-based ones, and that is an option outside of the ACA for healthcare.
And we're going to take a short break to hear a word from a sponsor, Handyman Services. They serve the entire Charlottesville area, taking care of hundreds of needs around the home and office. Everyday repairs of all kinds, installation of innumerable types of household fixtures, handrails, door locks, lights and fans, baby proofing, etc., furniture assembly, minor painting, screen and installation repair, picture hanging, and hundreds of other jobs too numerous to list. All of their work is performed honestly, responsibly, and conscientiously, and comes with a personal emailed report at the end of the day, noting everything they did, along with relevant details, comments, and useful suggestions for the customer. Their rate is $45 an hour. Call or email Chris anytime to see how he can help you. Details in the show notes. Yeah, it was interesting researching this. There was it's very much what's called the horseshoe theory, where like the farther ends actually mimic each other. It seems that direct primary care is either very rural and very religious, or very urban and very liberal, secular, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it runs the gamut of all of the US, right? Like we are on a bell curve, and all different kinds of people start DPCs. The nice thing about DPCs is you can make your DPC whatever you want. If you have very strong opinions about certain things, I mean, I personally think we need to keep that stuff out of the exam room, but you can kind of create your DPC however you see fit.
What's the difference between your practice and a concierge?
Okay, so concierge is where they take insurance and then they charge a very large premium on top of that insurance. To DPC docs, we kind of consider ourselves the rebel docs. To us, concierge was allowing only people of means to skip the line. And that felt really inequitable to me. Like, I really enjoy taking care of people. I mean, I trained in the South Bronx, so like I'm used to seeing like what is real out there and people falling through the cracks. So DPC is a model that's accessible to most people. Of course, there's going to be people who fall off the end because they can't afford it. But, when people value what they're getting, it seems like a reasonable amount of money for them to spend to get a different level of care. So that's really the only difference is, we don't take insurance at all. So basically, people pay us a monthly membership or they pay annually. How much that is depends on the DPC. Everybody can, make their own price point. Mine is $100 a month or $1,200 a year. Basically, patients pay that. And what they get in terms of paying that is that I can have a much smaller patient panel. So under insurance run clinics, the average physician has a panel of between 1,200 and 2,000, sometimes 2,500 patients. There is absolutely no way you can properly manage that number of patients. The average DPC they vary because some people are part-time or they're moms or, they're later in their career and want less patients, anywhere from like a micro practice of 300 to, 900 patients. I don't know many DPCs who have more than 1,000 patients per doc. And because I have less patients, I can spend more time with the patients that I have. So when I see a patient for the first time, I spend 2 hours with them, or I block out 2 hours. Sometimes I get done in an hour and a half. Very rarely do I get done before an hour and a half because we start at point A, their birth. Was it a healthy birth? How did it go? Were you in ICU? Did you have any childhood illnesses? Did you have any concussions? Blah, 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 blah. And we go to where they are now. And most people come to me in their 40s and 50s and up, though I do have, a number of UVA students and things like that, because the parents want, to make sure their kids have access. We get a really good, first of all, it builds a great relationship, and it really kind of lets me know where their health is at and how they got to where they are today and what we need to work on. When they need to see me or when I need to see them, I can get them in pretty much within a day or two. If it's something I have to see them for that day, I will see them that day. And that is so different than calling your doctor now and being told you can't be seen for 3 weeks or, sometimes 3 months. Patients really love that they can call. They also can send me text messages. So they love that because they can ask a quick question. And I always laugh when patients come in and say, you know what, I'm really healthy. You'll probably never see me, blah, blah, blah. And I always laugh because they're the ones I get the most questions from, because what has happened is you kind of learn not to ask your doctor questions because you didn't have access to them. Or when you had access to them, you had time, you had 7, 8 minutes. You could focus on one issue and that was it. And so all those other questions went by the wayside. So we spend a lot of time on preventative care, which is, foundational. So that's basically how it works. People can get in. We find other ways to save money. I have an in-house pharmacy. I do not keep controlled substances, but I do have an in-house pharmacy. So I get to avoid what's called pharmacy benefits managers, a drug that you could get a year's worth of blood pressure medication. I can get it for like $10. So lots of patients, it's cheaper to use me than to even use their insurance. Or if they're just really sick, the last thing they want to do is have to go to CVS, and wait for several hours to get their amoxicillin because they have, strep throat. So they walk out with $5 worth of amoxicillin. So they really enjoy that. And then another way of saving money is something called client billing. Labs are incredibly expensive. And so patients don't like to get labs because they get a lab bill for $500, $800. So a lot, we keep it very narrow and everything. I have client billing, which means I guarantee payment of the bill to the labs. And in exchange, they discount it markedly. So for example, a CBC, complete blood count, is $3 for me to do. But if I send it into insurance, you're going to get paid, you're going to get charged $30. So this is a way of
what is the CBC
it's a
look
blood
at?
count. Do you have anemia? Do you have an infection? Do you have a blood cancer? Any of those things.
So it sounds really much like any small business. You're always streamlining, you're always looking to cut costs, which can both you can pass on to your consumer, your client, your person that you're seeing and helping. And my next question was just like, what are the general services you do? It sounds like broken bones maybe, or just anything you would give
Pretty
to
much.
a normal,
Pretty
for
much
lack of a
all
better term,
primary
normal
care, a typical primary care. People vary in their training. I don't set broken bones. I certainly diagnose them, but I don't set them. GYN services, pediatrics, weight management, chronic disease management, lacerations, you name it. Primary care to me is one of the hardest, if not the hardest field in medicine, because you have to know so much about so much. So
what were some of the surprises and maybe even pitfalls to opening your practice when you were just getting started or even considering getting started?
I haven't luckily experienced like huge pitfalls. I will say I had zero business acumen. So that has been something I've had to learn the hard way, and how much time it takes up. So that's really the toughest part of it. The medicine part, I've been doing medicine for 28 years. So, I feel very confident in that. The business part, I still always struggle with. Luckily, it's kind of runs itself at this point, but just overseeing that's the biggest and hardest thing, I think. So many hats. Yeah.
What's your staff? Is it just you, or do you have some
Yeah,
part-time people that you
I
contract?
have
Do you have a
one
nurse?
staff.
One
I have
staff.
one. Yeah, and she wears many hats. She's wonderful. Luckily, I knew her as a friend. She was my daughter's Waldorf teacher for a number of years. And when she left Waldorf, I snapped her up, trained her. And so she does all my admin and billing and blood draws. But I don't really need a nurse. And patients really like the anonymity and privacy they get without having to come into a clinic that's packed full of people, talk to a front desk person, then talk to a nurse, and then finally see the doctor, 40 minutes later. So my patients walk in, they don't wait. They don't have to, give their story to a nurse. They just talk to me.
We are in Charlottesville, Virginia, and your UVA hospital. Do you work with helping to train medical doctors at all? Like when I go to my primary care physician, it's probably about once every other year, I'm in there with a med student. Do you participate in that at all, or does direct primary care kind of?
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. And it's really medical residents reaching out to me because they're interested in it. I have had, for the most part, my patients are okay. I have to ask them because I'm not a training facility and they do value their privacy. Charlottesville is a small town in many ways. So if a medical resident is truly interested in direct primary care, then I will take them. Then that's kind of my key where I'm like, okay, I'll show you what I do. So I've done that a few times, but I don't generally train medical residents.
What are some of the main reasons people come to your practice or switch to your practice?
They can't get in to their docs. They don't have enough time with their docs. They don't, sometimes they really don't feel like the care they're getting is good enough. That is why they come to me. They want to have a relationship with their doc. They want to feel heard, and they want it to be convenient. I mean, everybody's busy, and people are busy too, and they want to, when they're sick, they want to be able to get in, or if they have a question, they want to be able to ask it. So that's pretty much the number one reason why people come.
So in that way, give us some success stories, maybe obviously taking out any actual names, but what are some of the favorite success stories that you've seen, or personal stories that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be very general. I feel like I have a lot of success stories, which is great. Success in getting people to change their lifestyle. I've, been really quite successful in getting people to quit smoking, or to stop overusing substances like alcohol, exercising. So, in the primary, like the preventative medicine realm, which I really focus on with my patients, I have lots of success stories there, which is great. My favorite success story is a blue collar working guy who pays me and I see him like once a year. But I do insist I see my patients once a year. He's in his early 40s, healthy, came in for his physical. Everything seemed totally fine. But because I had the time with him towards the end of the appointment, which this happens a lot in medicine, he actually told me something that was a bit of a red flag for me. And he had already gotten dressed from his physical and was like ready to see me next year. And, to cut to the chase, he had colon cancer. And had I not, had a relationship with him, first of all, and called him personally and said, you really need to come in. Like, I need you to come in at least once a year. I know you're working and everything, but I need you to come in. So he came in. And then he told me towards the end that he had the symptom. Well, we caught it. He didn't have any insurance. Spent the time to find a physician who would do a cash pay colonoscopy. Didn't just like leave him to try to manage this himself, which kind of would have probably happened. Got it taken care of, and he's completely healthy. So that's my favorite one. He's
Yeah.
alive today because he had, access to medical care.
So in researching this, at least in the Charlottesville area, there appears to be only one single male-run direct primary care practice. There are two others that it's a husband and wife team, and then most appear to be female-led. What do you think is the basis for lack of a better term, gender imbalance?
Yeah, it doesn't play out over the country at all. We just have some fabulously strong and gritty women with grit here. The first person who started a DPC was a woman, happened to be friendly with her, was able to kind of get that mentoring, so I think just other women have done it, and certainly other men will do it eventually. Doctors are very risk averse. I've been trying to hire another physician for a long time, and it's been very difficult. Luckily, finally, I have been able to do that, but and they're two women. But, I have no problem having a guy on board. In fact, I think that, some of my patients would love that. Doctors are really trained from residency to kind of like, be in the system because it's all they know. And so it's very scary, I think, for docs to like go outside the box.
What are some criticisms of direct primary care and how would you counter those? I couldn't actually really find any in doing research, so I'm hoping you can give me maybe a
Oh,
steel
well,
man answer, but
sure. I mean, the biggest criticism is, and the question I get asked a lot when I speak to other doctors about it is, if you're only seeing 400 patients and we have a shortage of doctors, that's not, helping, the situation. And my answer to that is I'm not responsible for the state of our medical care in this country. I just knew that I could no longer be part of it and I had to remove myself. And I do really good work with the patients I have. The issues are larger than DPC, way larger. So DPC shouldn't get the rap for that. Besides that, there's zero criticisms that you could really level at DPCs. They provide great care at affordable prices with wonderful access. So I'm not really sure what other, complaints people could have. Of course, the insurance industry does not love us. That's okay. In terms of like, I'm not a politician.
not many people like the insurance companies. So it's all right. I
No.
will lay some cards on the table. I have insurance through my employer. I've been very happy with that. I've never had a problem with having insurance through an employer because I've always been gainfully employed. And I've never had a problem with insurance, period. Like anytime I've had a pretty big medical issue, it's been nearly 100% paid in full. I am very much the exception because I also have friends that don't have insurance and still work at halfway decent jobs, or they have really crappy insurance and they work at even worse jobs. So it's just a shot put of mixing, and I feel very blessed that myself and my family have nearly so far 100% coverage of anything that's gone wrong. But I know that is not.
It is very much the exception.
Yeah.
Most people at this point have, for all intents and purposes, catastrophic insurance. You're paying all this money and yet you still have a, four, five, $9,000 deductible. When you go to the doctor, or if you get an MRI, or you have to go to the ER. So things are charged at insurance rates. So, you're paying this like top rate for these tests. And, still most people aren't going to meet their deductible, but, something like an x-ray that really, an x-ray of the forearm, really you can get it cash pay for $100. If it's charged to insurance, you're probably going to pay significantly more, at least 3 times more, if not more. So
Yeah, we'll get into that. I want to hear more breakdowns of that later, but I've got a few more
sure.
questions for you before we get into that fun nitty grittiness. Are there any parts of the country that you think direct primary care is needed more than just an average population map of the country?
I mean, personally, I think it's needed everywhere. I mean, if you're asking me, I think it's needed and it's growing everywhere. Of course, rural America needs physicians, and I really strongly think that we need to change our medical training to require rural rotations into rural areas as part of the a family medicine or family practice, or all residents, even if they're going into specialties. I think that's really, really important. Again, I'm not a politician. I grew up in politics, though. I would love to see medical school become free or incredibly, subsidized for people who go and do service in these rural areas. It's really hard work, and you're it. I have
Yeah, for a friend of mine in the area actually got a full ride to UVA Medical because the Virginia State offers several scholarships that they will pay for medical school as long as you're going to an in-state Virginia medical school, and then you serve a designated rural area for 10 years in whatever capacity. So I think that's really great. I think teaching should be somewhat similar. The state or federal government will pay for you, but then you get paid to go to school, and then you have to work in a certain designated area. You can't be like, oh, I got it. Now I'm gonna go work at a rich private school in
right,
Upper East Side.
right.
Can't be doing that.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm a big supporter of that. I think that would be great if we had more of that. So yes, of course, the rural areas of the US are horribly underserved. If you have to go 2 hours to get to a doctor, that's awful.
yeah, if you can get to Walmart quicker than your doctor's office, that might be a problem.
Yeah, and I would have questions with the quality of care. Yeah.
Healthcare all over the developed world is stressed. This is not just an American problem. Britain's NIH is underfunded and short-staffed. Canada has weeks or even months wait time for specialists. Sweden has just cut several of its primary services for healthcare based on polluting budgets. It's projected Germany will lose a quarter of its general practitioner doctors by 2030, mostly due to doctors retiring and not enough general practitioners coming out of med school. But closer to home, healthcare, as we've just already talked about, is very expensive in the US and is also stressed with labor shortages. What are some practical ways you suggest fixing or mitigating some of these structural problems? Not to get too political, but just your opinion, especially since you've served in Germany, you've served. What are some
And England. So
and
I
England?
lived in England and Germany, so I got to experience both systems.
So and then in what ways, yeah, would you on a practical level start mitigating some of these problems?
It's a big thing. I mean, I would have to start with tort reform. You
What
know,
what what is tort and how would you
in the laws governing how doctors can be held accountable for things. If we have to practice defensive medicine, and if we have to spend like a ridiculous amount of time charting things that really don't need to be on the chart in order to, God forbid, we get called into court. Gross negligence, of course. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, an avenue for that, but it's a real problem in medicine. That's something that really needs to be looked at, because it is so disruptive to physicians. Often physicians are pressured to just settle, even though they do not feel in any way, shape, or form they're guilty, either by the corporation they're working under, the hospital they're working under, or because it would literally bankrupt them to go to court. That is a real problem. So that's one thing that I know is a real stressor for docs. We're doing the best we can, and I have to tell you, most docs, they're not in it for the money. They're like really in it because they care about people.
they're in it for the stress. I mean, clearly they're in it
Sure.
for the double
Sure.
coffees in the morning and the sleepless nights.
The other thing is there is no, so this is where kind of direct primary care comes in. Like maybe we need to have a greater amount of tax-free healthcare dollars and start to like limit those and really kind of change the insurance model where let's just call it what it is, catastrophic, and forget all these deductible things. Have a way where you have a certain amount of tax-free dollars, and guess what, you can use it as you like and let the market like bring down those prices on x-rays. They're already, if most people don't know, they can get a cash pay x-ray or a cash pay mammogram, or there's all these things that you can get so much cheaper, and
or even get paid for preventative services through my healthcare. I can get up to $500 Visa gift card per year, just like running or doing some classes or just
but I'm
getting a
saying
flu shot or COVID shot.
take insurance out of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like when we have our car insurance is for when we have a crash. We don't use our car insurance to go get our oil changed or replace a tire that popped. Like it's for the crashes. And if we had a little bit of tax-free dispensable income that we could put forward, people are really good about making choices about their healthcare. But when insurance is dictating all this, that's a problem.
So it sounds like maybe you would want more people in, for lack of a better term, a more general HSA program, a more just like, or maybe even personalized HSA, like, hey, this is mine, it's tax-free, it's on a separate medical credit card or debit card, whatever you want to call it. And I can go to the pharmacy, I can go to direct primary care, I can do cash x-rays with it. Sure.
Yes.
I'm sure that will have problems of its own. but
But the
you know,
system as it is isn't working. And so putting the power back to people as to how they want to spend their healthcare dollars and having those healthcare dollars to spend and just having insurance for the car crashes, the life crashes, the health crashes that we have. Because of course we need insurance. Certainly, people get cancer and they get into accidents, and there's an awful lot of waste, and it's unbelievably expensive, and people just can't afford it. So
where
that's
would you
one
see
thing.
the most amount of waste, do you think, in the insurance industry or just healthcare in general?
I'm not even get into that because I don't feel like I'm an expert on it. I can only say from like what I see on the ground as a primary care doc. The prices are so unbelievably inflated because of insurance. You have a whole bunch of people taking a whole bunch of slices of pie, and the person who's like paying for that pie is the American people. I'd like to see a lot less people getting slices of the pie. And then we need to have more medical schools. There's no reason that we can't put more people through medical school and have them
Do you
again.
mean that just for doctors or nurses as well?
Doctors, nurses. I'd like, I'm somewhat concerned about the rise of mid-levels and mid-level autonomy functioning as doctors, but not having gone to medical school. I certainly feel like there's an important role for mid-levels.
What would be a mid-level?
A nurse practitioner. Yeah.
Because they can, yeah, they're basically like junior doctors is how it's been described, because they can prescribe medication, right?
Yes. I wouldn't call them junior doctors personally, but they have a lot of autonomy. In Virginia, they can practice autonomously, and totally a role. Are we going to replace all doctors with nurse practitioners because it's less expensive? I don't know. Conversation we need to have. I think we do need more physicians in this country. I don't know why we're not opening more medical schools. There are highly qualified. When I applied to med school, one of my good close friends who did better on the MCATs than I did didn't get in, and I did. And there's no reason that so many people get denied going to medical school. That's one way to do it. The other thing, and the legislation that came up recently to allow foreign doctors who have trained in residency spots in the US, they had to wait like 2 or 3 years, I forget exactly what it was, before they could then get their citizenship and then work. So the legislation came up to say, we'll do away with that, but you have to work in a rural area. And that garnered a lot of support. But yes, I would say we need to up the number of medical residents we have.
Yeah, I have a friend from Scotland, actually, and his parents moved here for, I'm not sure why, but he'd already gotten his medical degree, his MD, in the UK. And when he moved here, he had to wait almost 3 years. I think it was 2.5. And in that intervening time, he got like a master's in public health or something. Just maybe we can just pull that into like whoever we allow dual citizenship, right? Like if whatever country we already have a dual citizenship handshake for those, I would assume those doctor programs, Germany, Sweden, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, like I assume those are analogous to our own medical system or our own medical training.
Yeah, but I when I was in England, I would have had to have gone through residency again in order to practice medicine, and I had been doing it for 16 years. So
Doesn't sound like a great way to do that.
My experience with medicine in England and Germany was good. Was it perfect? No. I have to say, I got in faster in England and Germany than most people are getting into their doctors here now. So I think we always hear the horror stories, and there certainly are like constraints because other countries don't spend as much on their healthcare. Those are questions every country has to answer. Like, how much do you want to spend on healthcare?
And it's only going to get, I mean, that healthcare is, that's a cliff coming with the population decline we're seeing across the developed world. That is a fiscal cliff that someone's going to have to make hard probably pretty awful decisions about when, not if, the time comes in the next 20 or 30 years. That's going to be really bad.
Yes. You know,
So off,
do you get a knee replacement if you're 75? They're tough questions.
yeah,
Or moral questions.
yeah. Jumping off that, why are doctors, at least in the US, leaving healthcare and not going into direct primary care? Why are they just leaving healthcare, period, and not trying to do their own little practice?
Well, the ones who are generally leaving are closer to retirement. There are some staggering, frightening statistics about doctors right now. 50% of doctors say that they feel like they have at least one symptom of burnout.
I assume that's because they're just seeing so many patients all the time, and they probably feel a lot of downward pressure from both
Yes.
insurance or maybe administration, like get more in, get more in, get more in. You're just,
Yeah.
I assume
Um,
most people got into healthcare in general, but doctors specifically to help and take care of people. And they're feeling more like a cog in a machine instead of the actual more ethical and moral principles they got in
right.
to healthcare for.
I mean, that's what doctors will say: burnout, burnout, burnout. I'm expected to see more and more patients. There's not enough hours in the day. When we look at studies about doctors, the number of doctors to the number of admin from like the 1950s to the beginning 1980s, pretty much flatline. It literally goes up at a 75-degree angle in the 80s.
Administration.
Administration, the billing and the insurance and this regulation this and this regulation that. So
The number one area of, I mean, that's the same in, I just did an interview with problems in higher ed with a sociologist working in higher ed. And he said one of the main ballooning costs of higher ed is because now there's on average a 4-to-1 ratio of administrators to professors. And it's kind of like your main product is teaching. Your main product is giving service to people. And when you have too much background bloat, I mean, that's just going to increase costs out the wazoo. Like, he doesn't work at a big research institution. Like, if you say UVA's costs are ballooning, well, that's because they are building new chemistry buildings. They run a nuclear reactor on grounds. Like, those are costs that are just like, okay, you need a few $100 million to run a reactor. That's understandable. If you work at a small private liberal arts community, do you really need 5 administrators for every 1 professor?
right.
And you work at a small general practitioner's office, do you really need 5 billing people for every doctor? Like, I don't know if that ratio is correct, but do you need more administrators?
But the whole principle is there.
Your
records
product,
person,
the product should be more than your background.
Streamlined, yes. Yeah. So I do with 1. And not billing outside of just my monthly, which is automated, is a huge time saver. So yeah, so doctors, I mean, in answer to your question, the reason I left, I would have left medicine if I didn't start my DPC. I was exhausted. I missed all my children's shows, plays, sports, everything. And the final straw for me was when I was told I'd have to let them know when I was going on vacation 4 months ahead of time. I don't even know what my kids are doing 4 weeks ahead of time. That was not possible. Once I started DPC, I felt I regained my autonomy, power over my schedule, power over decision making, power over how many patients I want to see, how often I want to see them, how long I want to see them, how I want to manage them, finding workarounds for insurance issues, for cash paying, finding other ways of saving the money. I love doing advocacy work for my patients. It's kind of my superpower. It's the New Yorker in me. So that all just feels so much better. And I never miss one of my kids' things anymore. So that is just a huge quality of life issue for me. I work.
Yeah, I saw a meme on Facebook or something like that that said, if you have a job that allows you to take time for your kids, you've already won at life.
Yes. For all those reasons, I would have had to leave medicine. I looked into being a medical writer or anything else.
Something somewhat adjacent.
Yeah, if possible. But honestly, it got to the point where, I would have just gotten a job. And, the country would have lost my, pretty extensive experience. And I'm not alone. And that's why doctors are leaving, because we don't feel empowered anymore. We feel run by insurance companies. We feel like our hands are tied constantly. So it's super frustrating for people who are just trying to take care of patients. And it's very worrisome that doctors' mental health is seriously compromised. Many of them are struggling. The answer seems to be like some really bad, when I was working for clinics, some really bad, meetings about stress management. But they never got to the root of the issue, which was, stop asking me to see more patients than can absolutely fit in the day. Just so everyone knows, 40% of time is spent with patients. 60% of time is spent admin, charting, checking boxes, things like that. So
in a normal insurance-based clinic somewhere else.
In a normal insurance-based clinic. And if you're seeing patients all day, because you're seeing even more patients than you can see all day, where does that other 60% of work get done? It gets done after hours. It gets done on the times you should have to decompress, to enjoy other aspects of your life, so that you are in a good mental, emotional, and spiritual place and physical place to take care of yourself. Doctors are not feeling that. And the doctors who come into direct primary care are like, oh my God, why didn't I do this years ago? For the most part, some people, it doesn't work because they're not good enough business people, or it's, the community just doesn't understand it. I very rarely get the question, why should I pay you if I'm paying insurance? Because I think patients know. I have never advertised. I have a 1-year wait list. Which is why I'm hiring someone else. I have never advertised in my life. It's word of mouth. People are like, you need to go.
In that way, if a doctor or even just a med student is listening to this, if they're feeling burned out or rather trepidatious towards the healthcare industry in general, how would you advise him or her if they're, already feeling burned out, or they're like, this insurance plan doesn't look great for me? How would you advise them on opening a direct primary care practice?
I would advise them to just Google their closest direct primary care and go and talk to them. I think it's something you have to see. Spend a day with a direct primary care doc, see how the flow is different, see how different it is. Then we have a very extensive direct primary care chat groups on Facebook. And direct primary care docs are so generous with their time and knowledge and experience, and willingly share it. They share business plans, they share forms that you're going to want, they share ideas, they comment on, how good your website looks if you want them to. They are so helpful. I mean, I learned everything about how to do this from being on these chat groups with people, other DPCs who had gone before me.
Well, Dr. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on Church
You're
Coffee.
welcome.
Your information will be dropped in the show notes. So if someone wants to just check you out, you did just say you have a year-long wait list, but
I do, but I'm hiring 2 docs. So
maybe that'll be
if people are
shortly.
interested, they can join my wait list, and it will be speeding up very quickly.
And besides that, everyone else, we'll see you next week for Church Coffee.
All right. Thanks so much.
Our album art was done by my wife, and our theme music was composed by TJ Stokes.